used in nuclear bombs, buried in tunnels and deep under a mountain. Now, this is what Fordo looked like before the attack. And this image, confirmed by BBC Verified, is just hours after the strike. And you can see over here these holes. It looks like where the bombs impacted before burrowing down and then exploding. What you can see around it is probably concrete thrown up by the resulting explosion. Now, here is the Isfahan site before the bombing, and this is what it looks like now. So far, the International Atomic Energy Agency says it's seen no radiation leaking from the sites. And one possibility is that that's because the nuclear material might not have been there. These images were taken just a couple of days before the attack at Fordo, and they show a large number of trucks. It's possible they could move some of the uranium, as Iran has claimed. This was Natanz nuclear facility before the attack. The question is whether after it, Iran retains the nuclear material, equipment, and scientists, some of whom have been killed, to rebuild or even race for a nuclear bomb. If so, then we may see even more strikes.
There is no doubt this attack is a violation of the United Nations Charter, and as well as one aggression, armed aggression to the Iranian national sovereignty and Iranian territorial integrity.
But international law will not stop this conflict escalating. Iran could hit back by firing missiles at US bases in neighbouring Iraq or in Bahrain or Qatar. It could even close the Strait of Hormuz. That's an economically vital route through which shipping and especially oil flows. As American B-2s landed back at base in Missouri, this mission may be over, but the war they are now part of may only have just begun. Gordon Carrera, BBC News.
We've heard Iran says it's keeping all options open in terms of retaliation, but its immediate response earlier today was to launch more missile strikes on Israel, which began direct hostilities when it attacked Iran 10 days ago. Iranian missiles struck Haifa and Tel Aviv, injuring more than 80 people. Tonight, Prime Minister Netanyahu says Israel will keep going until it achieves its goals. Lucy Williamson reports from Tel Aviv.
Iran once saw its ballistic missiles as a deterrent against Israeli attacks. But even the intense barrage that shook Israel this morning isn't shaking Israeli support for the war. A nearby care home slowly evacuated, room by room. 10 days into this war, Israel's Prime Minister is determined to continue. Buildings may be turned to rubble, but there's no crack in public support.
We got out of bed and we went to the safe room, or the tremendous boom. When we came back, we saw an apartment. It's not our apartment anymore.
We're okay. Everybody's okay. They want us destroyed, and we're not going to let it happen.
This conflict has exposed Iran's weaknesses and has become more dangerous with America's intervention overnight. For 10 days, Iran has been bombarding Israeli cities. Israel hasn't blinked. Tehran has already lost the protection of its proxies in the region, and its ballistic missiles are not the deterrent it had hoped. It now faces the critical decision of whether negotiations offer a better chance of protection than a nuclear weapon. Israel's Prime Minister said today that America's intervention was a turning point in the war.
History will record that President Trump acted to deny the world's most dangerous regime the world's most dangerous weapons. His leadership today has created a pivot of history that can help lead the Middle East and beyond to a future of prosperity and peace.
But not all American intelligence agencies shared Israel's assessment that Iran had suddenly begun racing to build a nuclear weapon.
All I know is that from an Israeli perspective, our margin of error on Iran's nuclear program is exactly zero. And all we have to do is make one mistake and we're dead. And if the Israeli government concluded that it was going to err on the side of survival, it was going to err on the side of survival.
This is Benjamin Netanyahu's war. Israel's Prime Minister has wanted to strike Iran for decades, and he's already drawn in an American president who wanted to avoid it. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Tel Aviv.
The UN Security Council held an emergency meeting to discuss the U.S. airstrikes on Iran's nuclear sites. Amir Sayed Iravani, who is the permanent representative of Iran to the UN, spoke in the last hour. Take a listen to what he said.
Today, another stain was recorded in the political history of the United States. After the legitimate Israeli regime failed to do the worst dirty work, Trump was forced in the early hours of Sunday, June 22, to personally carry out the most sordid part of this vile agenda. Once again, the internationally wanted war criminal Netanyahu succeeded in hijacking U.S. foreign policy, dragging the United States into yet another costly, baseless war. America has once more recklessly chosen to sacrifice its own security merely to safeguard Netanyahu. Once again, the world has witnessed the blatant corruption of the U.S. political system and its leaders. As an independent, peace-seeking nation, the Islamic Republic of Iran has repeatedly warned the warmongering U.S. regime to refrain from stumbling into this quagmire. Even though Iran deserves its full and legitimate right under international law to defend itself against this blatant U.S. aggression and its Israeli proxy. The timing, nature, and scale of Iran's proportionate response will be decided by its armed forces.
Now, the Israeli representative to the United Nations, Danny Danon, also spoke at that meeting. Here's what he had to say.
Last night, history changed. The United States of America struck Iran's nuclear sites at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. The United States, the leader of the free world, removed the greatest existential threat facing the free world. Just like our Operation Rising Lion, this was not a war of choice. This action was a necessity. It was a righteous act for the United States, for Israel, for the Middle East, and for the world. So the entire world should say on record today, here and now, thank you. Thank you to the United States for removing the greatest threat to global security. Thank you, President Trump, for acting when so many hesitated. Thank you for protecting the free world with strength and with moral clarity. Now, some come here to denounce the United States and Israel. So let me ask you, where were you? Where were you when Iran raced toward the bomb? Where were you when it enriched uranium far beyond the point of civilian usage? When it buried entire fortress beneath mountain to prepare for our extermination? Where were you when Iran turned negotiation into theater and deceit into strategy?
So those clear messages from the Israeli and Iranian representatives to the United Nations. Iran's president says that his country won't be bullied and that the U.S. must receive a response to its aggression. So what are the options for Iran's leaders? The BBC isn't currently allowed to broadcast from inside the country, but the BBC has a Persian service that reports on what is happening there. And this report now is from Siarvash Ardalan of the BBC Persian service.
In the center of the crowd, Iran's president, surrounded by hundreds of party faithful, venting their fury at the United States. What America did is truly unforgivable, says this woman. Iran is stronger than they perceive. But after last night's U.S. attacks, the regime here is seriously weakened. So what comes next? The Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei could swallow his pride and possibly save his regime and the country from further damage. Or he could fight on and risk everything. Domestic public opinion is now divided and confused.
The response must be firm and decisive. What's at stake here is the very identity of being Iranian. In my opinion, Iran needs to engage in some reflection and contemplation.
As for the country's Revolutionary Guard, it responded by saying US military bases in the region are vulnerable. But they know retaliation would invite further US attacks. This is a state TV reporter who went to Fordo. I can't see much damage, says. For now, it's America's war against Iran's. Weakened and humiliated, the Iranian regime will struggle to maintain its credibility and grip on power in the face of widespread discontent. Siala Shardana, BBC News.
Now, we saw the Iranian envoy at the United Nations critical of the US's allies, including the UK. I should say that a Downing Street spokesperson released a statement saying that the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has spoken to the President, Donald Trump, and it says the leaders discussed the situation in the Middle East and reiterated the grave risk posed by Iran's nuclear program to international security. It goes on to say they discussed the need for Iran to return to the negotiating table as soon as possible and to make progress on a lasting settlement. So that statement from a spokesperson from Downing Street, again, the Prime Minister speaking to US President Trump tonight. And we also know that the UK Prime Minister chaired a meeting of the government's Emergency Cobra Committee. He said all necessary measures are being taken to protect British interests in the region. And again, a call for de-escalation.
We've long had concerns about the Iranian nuclear program and been very clear that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. The US has now taken action to alleviate that threat. It is important that we now de-escalate the situation, stabilise the region, and get the parties back around the table to negotiate.
Now, some in Iran have chosen to go to bordering countries. Our correspondent Orla Guerin reports.
Turkey's border with Iran, flanked by mountains, and now a gateway to and from a country under attack. At the Kapikoy crossing this morning, we found movement in both directions, some fleeing the bombing by Israel and America, others rushing back home to be with loved ones. Amir, a retired British Iranian, had just fled Tehran.
And what was your feeling when you got across the border here?
Relieved, to be honest with you. I feel relieved, yes.
How dangerous was the situation in Tehran?
It is very dangerous. It is bad. The sky belongs to these really. So you can't do what they like. They're just coming in, they're just bombing out. And nothing there to stop them. Because they've got the skies, and that's it.
Very scary for you.
Very, very scary for everyone.
Amir says he got out with no help from the British Embassy.
But all of a sudden, embassies closed, staff are gone, phones cut off, and nobody answered. So I had to get my way out of the country. That's the way I'm here now.
You had to come on your own?
I had to, yes.
This is what he left behind, a country under fire, a regime that is holding on, and a war that may now escalate. But some, like 13-year-old Dariush, are hoping that a new Iran may emerge from the ashes. He crossed the border today with his younger brother and his mother. He told me he'll go home if change comes. God willing, Iran will be free. Soon all of us will live in freedom, he says, and the Islamic Republic will be gone. But among those going back into Iran today, there was more caution. We found no one willing to speak on camera. One man told us, "We're too afraid."
Disinformation. You think you're winning. Fooling people in the most sophisticated ways.